Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the natal chart of Chris Watts. Now, many of you may have heard this was some time ago, August 13, 2018. He murdered his wife and with two children. And I want to talk a little about his natal chart and some transits that may have played a role in this. Now, looking at his chart, he's got a number of some indicators for, I would say, volatility, violent behavior. He has, the one thing that stands out, his sun in Taurus is very close to the algal position, and this could indicate in very negative manifestation murderous tendencies. It can indicate a very recalcitrant, abrasive disposition, very negatively. I don't know if he was an alcoholic or not. Sometimes it can indicate that when expressed very negatively. Some of you may have remembered manager, baseball player from a number of years ago, Billy Martin, had his son near the fixed star algal degree, and I believe he was alcoholic. But I don't know if Chris Watts was or not, but I'm just saying, the possibility might increase because of this position. And another thing that I noticed too with this chart, he's got, the moon in Aries. That could be, very volatile, emotional nature. Along his wife had this. Their composite synastry moon is in Aries. He also, what I notice in his chart, and this might be controversial to some people may use this, some may not, but I use the ascendant in yod configurations. I think it's an important proponent in one's chart. Now in his chart, he has a yod configuration with Mars in Gemini, Venus in Aries sextile, and they both make inconjunct aspects to what I call the focal or apex point of the yod configuration, a Scorpio ascendant. And sadly, to me it seems like that it's almost like in this particular case it might have manifested very negatively, because you have that focal point, the Scorpio ascendant out. The rising sign, of course, is the outer demeanor, the outer projection of oneself. And negatively manifested Scorpio can be very vengeful, vindictive, and it's sometimes being very sinister as well. And it's like, you look at Venus and Aries, negative manifestation can be an enjoyment of volatility, of truculent behavior. And then Mars in Gemini, he wound up, strangling his wife. I believe it was manual strangulation. That's with the bare hands on the throat, if I'm not mistaken. And Gemini energy, of course, very strongly connected with the hands. And Mars, of course, is the planet of volatility and violence. And so you understand what I'm saying with this. Now, his chart has a preponderance of planets below the horizon, so very, probably more introverted, introspective than being extroverted, gregarious, probably more subjective than objective. And also, you look at going back to his sun in Taurus near the fixed star algal degree, that in negative manifestation, this could be really malevolent, type tendencies, sadly. And I'm not stereotyping by any means. I think most people that have the sun at or near the fixed star algal position will not exhibit those tendencies, but this is very negatively manifested. This is how I think could have played a role astrologically in him doing, what he did ultimately. Now he has his chart ruler. One of the chart rulers is in the 12th house. And that's the house, of course, of self-undoing, clandestine affairs. He became, apparently from what I understand, he claims the reason he did this murder of his wife and two children is that he was variably fixated, obsessed with his mistress. And Scorpio energy, Scorpio rising, can of course manifest in being very obsessed, very fixated with something. And you look at this, in having that chart ruler in that 12th house, a lot of that energy can be going into somebody that you're connected with in a clandestine affair. Now, also at this, I mean, in his chart, he has what I call, I mean, what it is, it's a fixed grand cross. Now, again, this could be controversial as well because some people may not see it as a fixed grand cross, but I consider it one. His midheaven, I'm using that in the fixed grand cross. I think the midheaven is a very important proponent in one's chart. Some people just use planets in grand crosses, but he has one that consists of the midheaven in Leo, Jupiter in Aquarius, Saturn in Scorpio, and again that fixed star Algol Sun in Taurus. Now, grand crosses in astrology can be about, you know, the saying crosses to bear. It can be a configuration of great tribulation and adversity. Sometimes it can give very good willpower to work through a lot of obstacles and obstructions, but you figure this cross to bear ultimately, I mean, Jupiter in Aquarius negatively manifested, of course, could be enlargement, a very unusual, bizarre behavior. You have, you know, the Leo midheaven, you know, reputation being, could be very domineering, overbearing, arrogant. And you have that Sun in Taurus, you know, can give, you know, in the Algol, near the Algol position, sometimes very nefarious, sinister behavior, recalcitrant behavior. And you have Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn can be connected with authority and responsibility. And of course, Scorpio is the sign most connected with murder. At the time that this occurred, when he murdered his wife and children, he had transit Jupiter close to his ascendant, and he also had the Sun transit Sun in the 10th house, making making the opposition to Jupiter. Now, the thing about this too is the fact that having Jupiter, you know, transit Jupiter hit his ascendant, I think that's really symbolic of the law catching up with him. He confessed like 2 days after the murder took place. I think the transits can show an indication of why he wasn't able to get away with this. Now, the thing is too, at the time of the transits, he also had transit Saturn, making a conjunction to his natal Neptune. Now, what this could represent to me is that authority caught up with him as far as imprisonment and incarceration goes, and also responsibility, manifested in responsibility to deception and duplicity. My understanding is the detectives had interrogated him for about 6 hours, and then he finally decided to confess. He probably just figured he was prolonging the inevitable. Chris Watson, he did what he had, I mean, because I think he knew that the evidence was going to be overwhelming and nearly insurmountable to overcome. At this time as well, Chris Watson, another transit he had was transit Uranus, making a conjunction to his natal Mercury. And this could give, you know, very, I mean, you know, some negative cases, perhaps, I mean, if it's positively manifested, it could be, you know, very innovative thinking, very unorthodox thinking, going outside the box. But what this might have happened with him, very unusual, bizarre thinking in his mind, and you know, thinking that would be really warped. And I think that's how maybe it manifested, and it might have been tied into money, being in the zodiac sign of Taurus. So those are some things I want to talk about as far as Chris Watts' natal chart goes. And sadly, his Sun in Taurus makes a conjunction to his wife's natal Chiron. So this could be an indicator as to wounds that he was going to be involved in, sadly associated with his wife's death. And because, I mean, given that this was done through manual strangulation, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right or saying it right, the larynx might have been might have been damaged. And of course, when you're manually strangling somebody, generally, I believe it's going to be, the hands are going to be on the throat. And of course, Taurus is connected with the throat. And of course, Mrs. Watts succumbed when she, died. Obviously, there were injuries, I'm sure, to the throat, and having Chiron in Taurus can be an indicator of actual, some cases, physical wounds to that part of the body. And it's just terrible that this went down the way it did, sadly. But it's good that, of course, Chris Watts was apprehended for this, and he's going to be facing, obviously, the repercussions in terms of his jail time. I don't know what his jail sentence was exactly, but anyway, we all have to, pay, of course, for our crimes, and there's always ramifications and consequences for them. So there's really not much else really want to say about this. I just wanted to talk briefly about Chris Watts' chart and explain some of the things as far as natally and through transits, which might have been attributed to some of this behavior at the time of the murders. Another thing too I thought was interesting is that he also had transit Pluto in his third house at the time. And of course, this could sometimes give very manipulative, destructive thinking. It could be, thinking about murder in some cases. And transit Mars was also in his third house at the time. And when transit Mars, I believe, had just gone over to 29 degrees Capricorn at the critical position. And Mars in Capricorn negatively manifested could be about very strong, could be about very premeditated, planned, volatile actions. And it was at 29 degrees. And of course, when you're talking about 29 degrees of a planet sign, it can represent, I believe, the full culmination of that energy, critical degree. So anyway, people. And also I wanted to add that, sadly, going to Mrs. Watts' chart, transit Pluto, sadly, was making a very close conjunction to her natal sun. And sadly, Pluto, with transit Pluto is hitting one's sun, it could sometimes obliterate life, give a greater propensity for that, because Pluto, of course, is about death, obliteration. The sun is associated with life, and given it's in Capricorn, it added some despondent, very melancholy, depressive energy associated with this, I believe. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.